Hello, how you guys doing out there? I don't know if this is went out to anybody, but I'm learning something new, trying to figure out how to do maybe some live streaming, connect with you guys. I really would like to connect with you. Um, just figuring out how that will be possible. So right now there nobody here yet, but we'll see if anybody shows. And I got some stuff I want to talk about. I've been thinking about when it comes to Arrival, and the movie and the nature of meaning and really what comes fundamental to this. Hi, how you guys doing? It's good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. For the next couple minutes, I wanted to try something new, try to explain the nature of meaning and how it relates to time. So if you guys want to dig in, please feel free to drop a question or offer an insight or something like that. I really enjoy the classroom setting, and we'll see if this works. So anyway, my thought is, in terms of Logos Made Flesh, the idea of Logos Made Flesh is the quest for meaning. How do we find meaning? Where do we discover meaning? And what's the meaning of any particular movie per se or book? Obviously, we deal with movies here on the channel, but it's really a quest for meaning at large. And where do we find that meaning? And ultimately, the question is, what is the meaning of life? What is your meaning? What is your purpose? And that's the question I think we all want answered. What is my meaning? Why am I here? As I've been working on the movie Arrival, I've been seeing that dealt with. If you've seen Arrival, it deals with that question in terms of the heptapods. Heptapods come from outer space. And the question posed to the heptapods is, why are you here? What is your purpose? And that question is really a question that's not just for them, it's a question being asked of us. And the answer the film gives is not just the answer of the heptapods, but it's the answer which is explaining it to us. So I'm working on that video, and in the process of working on that video, I just thought, man, I just need to explain this, work it out in my own mind, talk to some people about it, and hopefully enjoy what's to come. So the real question is, let's just ask the question: what is meaning itself? What is meaning, and where is it found? I think we all tend to know that some things are meaningful. We think, can I create meaning? Does meaning exist? Obviously, we know meaning exists. We have a feeling that meaning exists, but we don't quite know what that is. One of my first videos that I did on this channel, and you can go back, I talked about Jesus spitting in the Gospel of Mark. So if you just go back to that video and think about that video, what that entails. So Jesus spits in the man's eyes and asks him, open your eyes. And the man says, he goes, can you see? Jesus says, can you see? Sorry, let me relax here. I'm just trying to talk to people who are in a virtual world that I can't see or communicate with. I do much better when you're sitting in the room with me. So let me gather my thoughts here. So Jesus spitting in the man's eyes is very confusing to us. When you read the story, most people don't know what it means, and it seems absolutely utterly devoid of meaning. So we bring a meaning to it. We try to explain it to ourselves, but what we find is that when we read the story, we look back and we look forward, and as we look back and forward, we find the meaning of Jesus spitting in the man's eyes. Again, go back to that video to see what I'm talking about here. But you look backwards, and the context, bounded on either side, explains the meaning of Jesus spitting in the man's eyes. And that's true not just of this particular scene, but it's true of how we communicate every single day. And I like to use the word hand because I think it's really good. But if I say the word hand or I write it down, it's either the sound or the letters. You instantly have an idea about what that word means, because in our language, our language has a context, and the most common use of that word in our language is the five-finger appendage at the end of our arms, hand, right? And so we naturally assume the most common use when we see that word or hear that word in our context, which is our language, the English language. But we know that given its relationship to other words, the meaning that we initially see in this word can change to, for instance, it can either be help, it can mean help, or applause. So we see that this meaning that we initially saw changes with time. As we go through time, the meaning changes because we see a meaning in the future context. So depending on the context, the meaning changes. In my video on arrival, let's see if I can find my thing here. In my video on arrival, I showed that this isn't just true of words. It's basically true of symbols. It's true of anything that has meaning. So in the Kuleshov effect in film, I talked about the Kuleshov effect in film, how Lev Kuleshov in the early 1900s took basically a shot of an expressionless male actor as he stood there without a smile or a frown. He just stood there with a blank expression on his face. But Lev Kuleshov coupled that with a couple different pictures. So in one instance, he showed a bowl of soup. In another, he showed an attractive woman on a couch. And in another, he showed, I believe it was a child in a coffin. So what happened is that the link between these two things, if you saw this, you saw hunger. If you saw this, you saw the woman on the couch, you saw lust. And if you saw the woman, I mean the child in the coffin coupled with the man, you saw that the man was sorrow. He was sad. So what happened is that if you see the one thing coupled with the other, what it does is it has a reciprocal effect on the thing that came before. So meaning is found in the relationship of two things or more things. It's in the relationship that things are found. So the addition of something brings a meaning to something. So we find meaning in relationship. So what is meaning? Where is it found? It's found in relationship. And what philosophers call this, is the hermeneutic circle. So the hermeneutic circle. So the idea is that it's a circular process. Meaning is a circular process of an unbounded relationship between the parts and the whole. The whole defines the meaning of the parts, even as the parts define the meaning of the whole. But meaning is not independent of either. Meaning isn't found in the parts. It's found in the parts' relationship to the whole. We must see the whole before we can see the parts' true meaning. So that relationship and connection is what creates or where we find meaning. And in terms of language and how we speak, we understand this. So I'm encoding symbols and placing them in a context by which you are interpreting the context in order to understand what I mean. And it's the parts and the whole which are working together to form the meaning. Now this poses a problem. This poses a problem. And the problem is that, okay, so let's see this. Let's just say this. This hermeneutic circle is an instantaneous process, or it needs to be instantaneous. An instantaneous back and forth movement, okay, of parts to whole. So it's not that I'll one day see the whole, it's that I need the whole right now to understand the parts. I need the whole right now to understand the parts. So if we look into my video on Memento, I quoted from Søren Kierkegaard, who noted, and this was very very accurate, is that life can only be understood backwards from the whole, but he says it must be lived forwards. So while we understand the world this way, while the world is only understood this way, we only experience it this way, and there's a disconnect. So we need to look back, but we haven't quite reached it yet. We're looking forward, but we know we have to look back in order to find the meaning. Does that make sense? You guys following along with me? How are we doing? Let's see what some of the comments are saying here. What is my purpose? I don't know. How do I find out? I'm waiting on God. Ha ha ha. You're doing well. Don't worry. Thank you very much. Doing great, man. I appreciate that. Vivi Star says, will you be doing any more Bible videos? Those were excellent. I'd love to. Again, it's just the format and the audience that I have. I'm trying to figure that out, but I would love to get back to that. Miles Mungo says, if I remember correctly, C.S. Lewis mentioned this in regards to Christ adding to and changing the meaning of everything that came before him, Old Testament. Correct. That's a good observation. Dipanjan? Duda? Am I right? I got it when you said in the video about the female in the couch and the coffin one. Vivi Star, makes sense to me. Yes, it is. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the feedback there. Here's a question. Is this discussion related to the a priori, a posteriori conflict? Well, that's beyond me, but it sounds like it would be similar. If a priori means something you look forward to and the thing that you look back to, it seems to be that that's what you're referring to, if I'm correct in that assumption. But anyway, so again, the hermeneutic circle is required for meaning, but in time we have the past. Oh, this is running out. We have the present, and we have the future. Past, present, future. See, this is the problem. I'll just let you know the problem with doing this, and this is what I would love to do. The problem with doing this is that I get lost inside my own head without having someone actually physically here to talk to. I will just go round and round inside my own head, thinking about things, and they make utter sense to me because I see the whole, and I'm trying to communicate those things to someone who actually physically isn't here. My dad's a public speaker. He's spoken to 10 million, 3 million teens all across the United States. He did teen suicide prevention programs. Gifted speaker, great at communicating to audiences and reading people and talking to them. But he got himself a radio program about, 15 years ago or so. He got a radio program, and you sat him behind a microphone without anyone there. And man, he just could not communicate, could not do it. It was very hard for him to reach outside of him to an audience that wasn't in front of him. So it's something, it's a very difficult process. Some people just have it right away. Something that I have to work at, and I appreciate you allowing me to work at it today, to try to come up with this, what I've got inside my head. So anyway, in the past and future, we know that, let's just go back here. We know that meaning is only found in looking backwards from the vantage point of the whole. But in terms of our existence, we're looking forward from the past to the future, from the parts, which don't have meaning yet, because apart from the whole, or we don't know the meaning yet. Whole and part are working simultaneously together to form a text true meaning. Simultaneously, but yet our experience of time is not simultaneous. Our experience of time is unfolding in the present, the continuing present, moment by moment, without knowledge of the future. So this is important. I think this is important. The past is not simply what's come before, and the future isn't simply what comes after. I think that it's true of a given place. If I say in the present, the past is what came before, and in the future is what comes after. But in reality, how we experience past and future, well, we haven't experienced the future. The past is the world that we know. It is what is known, and the future is what is unknown. The past is what is known, the future is what is unknown, and the present is just a sliver, the doorway by which we make the unknown future become the past known. It's the stepping off into it's in the territory conceded by the unknown future as it becomes the known past. As we move into the future, the unknown future, as we move, the appearance of movement, the present becomes known to us, and the unknown future has now given up some of its territory to the known past. So that's in essence the movement that we are experiencing as we move into the future. But yet, this creates a problem. Okay, so the problem is that meaning is found in the whole, and what we have here is we have the appearance of a whole. Okay, because really the present offers us the whole of what we know. You can't say we can't think about the things that we do not yet know. We don't think about the things we do not yet know. We can't know all those kinds of things. They aren't part of our experience. We can imagine them, but we only imagine them from what we already know. We don't know those things, and so they're not part of our experience. The whole of what we know is right here in the past and the present. Nothing in the future can or could be known. It's completely beyond us. It's separate from us. And that leads to the problem. Well, it leads to the promise and the problem and promise of time itself. So time, and so what we're doing is that as we, in much the same way we're interpreting a text, in much the same way we interpret meaning in a conversation, we're interpreting the present based upon the context that we know. So in any given moment, the present reveals some sort of meaning to us. We can see in the present some meaning, some connection with the past, because we're looking in this holistic sense of the whole. We're looking back and forth, because in memory, in our minds, in the memory of our minds, there is the whole, and in that whole allows for the free movement back and forth to see the relationship of all the parts. And so we see meaning because we see the relationship in all the parts. We think we understand things because we see a whole in everything we've experienced. The problem is that we know from experience that the thing that we know now, or how we interpret meaning now, is subject to change as the present gives way to the future, or as the past. As the future becomes the past, or as the future gives up territory to the past. So like as for instance, if I say the word hand, we make an assumption about the meaning based upon its most common use in our culture. But that assumption could be wrong. We make an assumption based upon the context. It's the most probable thing. It means that's probably what it means. But yet, given more information, the context of something that's yet to be known, we can turn out to be wrong. Again, a great example of this is the Sixth Sense. We walked into the Sixth Sense with an assumption about how the film was meant to be interpreted. We took things at face value, but we took them, well, not so much at face, we took them as we expected them to be based upon the context of how we've seen other films. And yet, we found that as we went along, the assumptions that we had were revealed to become something were revealed to be wrong, and the film was meant to be interpreted quite differently. And that's the idea that the future gives way to something could change the meaning that we presently see. So there's a good example. I think this is a fun example of this, or at least an interesting thing, because we all experience a sense that time is speeding up with age. Over time, for whatever reason, we sit down one moment, and somehow in the present moment, there comes a point in our life where we realize that the present moment, or the present year, or whatever interval of time it is, suddenly seems like it was less than what it was before. And so we see a past which is somehow longer than it is in the present. And what leads to that feeling? Where does that feeling come from? Well, it's none other than the hermeneutic circle. It's the hermeneutic circle which is causing us to reinterpret time based upon our known experience. So think about this, okay? So if we're interpreting everything by what is known, and the present is giving way to new information all the time, let's just say, for instance, at the age of 1, one year was the whole of our lives. At the age of 1 year was the whole of our lives. How do we define what a year is? Well, we know it's the time period that goes, that the sun revolves around the earth, that's a period of time because we've marked it by something exterior to ourselves. But what's the defined feeling of a year? We only can define that by what we know and have experienced. It's not something we can do eternal. It's something we do internally by interpreting it in light of what we've come to know. So the second year that we live, a year is the half of our life. And by 3, it's a third. On and on it goes. 15 a 15th, 66 to 66 of our life. So if you see what's going on here, there's a reduction in our understanding of a year, our understanding of an interval of time. So what's going on here? Where for every moment of what we know, let's just say the past. Here's the past. The past is growing into the future. The present is giving way. As we move into the future, we're interpreting the past wholly by what is known. But each moment, something new occurs. So the new moment has to be reinterpreted. Every moment that we're moving into the future, every present moment that we receive. Again, the present is more or less eternal. The present is eternal because it's always now. Now, right now. Now 3 minutes, when I'm at 3 minutes, it's now, right now. It's always present to us. The present is always present, obviously. That's pretty simple. So it's eternally present, or at least we think it's going to be eternally present. There's no end to it in sight, at least as far as our experience goes. So each moment that we're experiencing something new in the present, we're having to redefine everything we know about the past. Redefine, or maybe not redefine, but make sense of the present in light of what we already know, even as what we already know is being reinterpreted by what we're experiencing in the present. So that's a problem because it means that right now we have so right now we have the appearance of meaning. We think we have it figured out. We don't, but in reality, the whole of our existence, we know, isn't yet the whole. That there's something out there which we're going to learn, which is going to change or could change everything we know. And that is a problem. Because it means right now, I have no access, or I have no assurance, let's just say not access, I have no assurance of what is the meaning of anything. That, it's one thing to look at a movie, finish, in the process of, let's just say, I always say this in terms of watching movies. I love doing this, typically when people read the Bible, I found this in reading the Bible, they read a chapter a day, and as soon as they're done with a chapter of the verse, they ask, what was that? What did that verse mean? Or they ask, what did that chapter mean? And without first reading the book and its place within a larger context, you really don't know what it means. And you're actually jumping too far in advance to really know what it means. So first get to the end of the book, then go back and look at the whole. For instance, in a movie, when we watch movies, I find this funny, is like, you don't ever stop a movie halfway through, pause it and say, all right, everybody, let's have a discussion about what this scene means. Well, you don't know what it means. You don't know what it means because there's an end that's coming, and you might as well just wait to the end because the end's going to reveal a great deal about what that scene means. So I got off track on this. Let's read some more comments. Maybe something will come up here. Let's see here real quick. Man, I got a lot of comments here. Thanks, guys. Doing great, man. I got C.S. Lewis here. Someone says, I just go with biological drive. Got that comments. Thanks for the comment. Let's see here. And got that comment says, and if there is no purpose, take comfort in there is none, all the more agency you have. Okay, that's a good question. I think that raises a good, interesting idea based upon what we're talking about here. Laugh out loud. I'll see all kinds of stuff in YouTube chats, but in real life, not a single word. History repeats. Okay. Pleasantly surprised. Jordan Laborde just joined, but this sounds a bit like what Pannenberg had to say about truth being only ever completed eschatologically. True, absolutely. Hope then is the key to any understanding. Oh man, that's good stuff. Looking past from the future. Awaken to life. I know, right? Let's see here what we got here. Dipanjan Duda. Every time I see your videos, I lose my mind. You are awesome, sir. Well, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that. I'm sorry they don't come out fast enough. I'm still working. So another person, Ryan Leon, says, are you trying to sell me a time machine? Keep talking. Oh, yes. Okay, we can talk about time machines real quick and where they exist. Or at least, yeah, philosophically where they exist. Ryan Leon says again, or someone says, Miles Mungo says to Ryan Leon, one might argue your mind is a time machine. Exactly. Memory is the only time machine we have in the sense that it's unbounded from the arrow of time, the linear progression of time. Time only moves in one direction, from past to future, from what is known to what is unknown. But in the past, see, in essence, you got to think of it, I would say that time in essence is kind of like a means of uploading information. So if we have a processor or whatever, and I'm downloading an app from the internet per se, it takes time to download it. The app doesn't work until it's fully downloaded. So time acts as kind of a means of downloading information. And really, there is no information, or at least the information makes no sense until it's been fully downloaded. And at the point it's been downloaded, we make sense of its meaning. The question is, what we experience right now, we think we have access to the complete file. It's still being downloaded. So there is no complete application to what we're experiencing right now. The meaning we see right now is not yet the meaning that will be. And therefore, we're stuck in the state of limbo of not quite being able to use what we've come to know. Darren James, is meaning and purpose superstition? That's a good question. Ryan Leon, not if you're from the future. Darren James, by the way, hello. Hello. Miles Mungo says, that makes so much sense. That movie analogy really helps to understand it. Man, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. This is hard for me. It looks like it's foreign. Dipanjan Duda. Question, are you going to make another video on a movie? If yes, what movie is it going to be? Well, that's why I'm here talking about this, because it's going to be on Arrival. This is the stuff that I think Arrival completely explains this stuff. That's why I've completely, my mind is lost in this stuff right now. I'm thinking about the logogram and language and what that movie is all about. And I think it's pretty profound. So, and it delves into all these things, which, interesting enough, I think the logogram of Arrival, the circle of the heptapods, the thing that keeps repeating, I think is a perfect example of what I mean when I say Logos made flesh. What I mean about Logos made flesh. Logos made flesh is the idea of meaning, logos, the idea of a word, meaning, purpose, becoming something tangible that we can all see, experience, know, and understand. And it's obviously biblical, but really that's the philosophical understanding of it. And so Arrival really offers a good picture of what I'm trying to do on this channel, or what I'm trying to aim for. So it's helping me to think more about explaining this channel to people, especially if they have the movie. I've seen the movie. What are your thoughts on nostalgia? Boy, good question. That is, well, nostalgia is basically a fear of the future. It's a disguised fear of the future. It's finding safety in the past. Because it's funny, and I've thought about this a lot, is that nostalgia is the idea that I can go back to the past with the memory that I presently have. No one wants to go back to the past without the memory they presently have. No one wants to give up on the knowledge that they presently have, the known, to go back to the past. What everyone wants to do in time travel is to go back to the past physically, not mentally, physically, to somehow change what's been done without giving up on the thing which is yet to come. We want that knowledge. We don't want to lose our minds. We don't want to lose what we've gained. Well, and someone said it best, I think it was great. Knowledge is a burden. Once you pick it up, you can never put it back down. Even if you want to, you can't put it back down. Knowledge is a burden. You can never put it back down. Once it's picked up, it can never be put back down. But nostalgia, again, because so basically, the present in nostalgia is a disguised fear of the future, because really what we're doing is we're saying, I want to go back to the past without giving up what I already know. And if we do that, if I go back to the past without giving up on what I already know, the past simply becomes the portion that I've skipped over simply becomes the future. So we find comfort in knowing the future even as we know the past. So it's that wholeness that we're seeking. Nostalgia is simply a longing for that wholeness that we've yet to find in the future. But nostalgia offers a comfort because we say, if I just remain in the past or I just go back to the past, that the meaning is right there and I don't have to keep on going. I can camp right here and find meaning for my life, the safety and security that I once had or whatever. And you realize that each and every moment we're walking into the unknown, being bombarded by, and the meaning that we once had or once saw is under assault and being torn down. So the safety and security we see is being changed, and that's disconcerting. So that's a bit about nostalgia. Vivi Star, will you ever consider doing a video on the movie Fury? So many Christians over it. Great movie, man. Shia LaBeouf did such a profound job in that movie. I love that when he says, here am I, send me. Man, sends tears in my eyes just thinking about it. Christopher Rodriguez, also doing great. Awaken to Life. Yeah, Fury would be great. Ryan Leone, spend your time better than you spend your money because money is only refundable. Or, because time is obviously something you can't get back. Do you have any interesting thoughts on deja vu? Not presently. Haven't really thought about it much. Only that the fact is that, that would be interesting to say that we are in some sense living the life we've already lived. But I don't believe that. Or that the future exists already. So let me get back to that because I'm going to talk about determinism, free will, because I think it relates to this, whether or not we are free and whether or not we are determined. So it says, Buzz Record Bear, I recently became Christian. Hope and meaning are indispensable. Praise God. You're interesting, dude. Thanks. Appreciate it, man. Christopher Rodriguez, very interesting take. Thank you, man. And Colleen, can you tell me what Logos is rising means? I woke up with those words in my mind recently. I've never, ever heard of that before. Logos is rising. No, I've never heard that before. Did you hear it somewhere specific? I'm not quite sure where that came from. Is time created? That's I'm just talking about mainly how we experience time, or at least how we experience the process of going from the known to the unknown. So obviously there's something which is known and there's something which is not yet known. In essence, there's a birth and there's a death. So birth always precedes death. It doesn't occur the other way around. So there's something true about the fact that time is moving one way and that time exists one way. But let's talk about freedom versus determinism versus free will in light of this. I wish I had... it's a little bit more interesting when you have people in the room again, because you can see them going, what is he talking about? And they get up and they walk out and you're not quite sure why. You can kind of figure out and read people where they're at. But let's talk about this. So, my wife's calling me. Let's hold off on that. So let's talk about determinism, free will. So the idea of the present, what we see in the present, what we find in the present. Let me get a pen. Hold on real quick. Liz. Well, that wasn't. Stepped on my dog because I wasn't paying attention. All right. So what we see in the present, this sliver between the past and the future. Again, the past is known, and the future is something which is unknown. So the past is known, the future is unknown. The question is about free will versus determinism. Are we free? Why do we have the appearance of freedom? Why might the world be determined? Why might we not have freedom? Well, the question is, where does freedom exist? And we've already talked about that. The hermeneutic circle, what is known, allows for a free movement in our minds, back and forth. But at the same time, that freedom of movement, allowing us to see everything at a glance, doesn't allow to change it. The past is the past. It cannot be changed, at least what we know of it. Because again, what is known is known. What is known can't be altered. We can bring a new perspective to it by looking back from the present. We can change our interpretation about it. That's what really looking back is. We change our interpretation about it. But the facts of what occurred in the past are in essence locked. They make sense to us in some sense because they can't be changed, because we know what they are. And that's what gives us the ability to interpret them. But the future is unknown. We have no freedom of movement there. The freedom of movement we have back and forth to access memories, to basically time travel. The question is, what about time travel? And again, time travel is in our memories because it's only there we have random access. We can jump from moment to the moment in the past. I can completely, right now I'm at the age of 1 at my parents' house, where we used to live, and then the next moment I'm 13 years old, but then again I'm 8 years old the next. I'm jumping back and forth in my mind in terms of the mental access I have to my past. And that's what leads me to more or less somewhat create the story or meaning of my life. That's time travel. That's why the past is, it's locked. It's the way that it is. So the future, though, is unknown. We don't know the future, which gives us the feeling that the future is open to all possibilities. That in the present, I can interpret the past. I can't yet interpret the future, and therefore I can't yet make any sense of the future. The future is completely unknown to me. So that means in some sense that the feeling I have right now is I feel like I have a choice. I feel like I can change what is out there. But is that simply the product of what we don't yet know? Let's just say, if there's choice, let's just say this, in some sense it's chaos out there. And that chaos means that in essence, it's meaningless. That no matter what I think about the future, basically we're just playing games about what meaning is. If the future is not bounded somewhere out here, if there's no end out here, then basically, in essence, all is meaningless. This is the absurdity that that Christians talk about when they talk to atheists, or at least they want to argue with atheists about, and atheists want to argue back, is that basically a world that goes on and on, unending, unbounded, without a beginning or end, without, in essence, God to bind it all together, is at its heart meaningless. And I say that because, again, where's meaning found? Meaning is found in relationship. Meaning is found in the connection of part and whole. Without the whole, the parts have no meaning. We pretend at meaning. We make believe that there is some significance, but at the heart of it, there is no purpose or significance to the parts apart from its connection with what Aristotle called final causes. So if the world goes unbounded, both in behind and before, then in essence, we are absolutely free. Free to make a choice. Free to make a choice, but in essence, that means that the world is in chaos and that any choice that we make is ultimately meaningless. That the choices that we make have no significance. And I tell this to people all the time. So if the part and the whole are connected, and basically where is part and whole connected? It's connected in our memories. Part and whole are connected in our memories. That's where we have time travel. That's where we can access all the parts to make sense of the, or access the whole in order to make sense of the parts. It means that if there is no consistent memory, some consistent thing which attaches us all together, brings us all together, then there is no meaning. So for instance, I asked, what purpose do you have? And most of us think that we have purpose and significance because we go, well, I have my kids. I got my kids and they're going to go on living even if I don't. And my purpose and significance in my kids, or it's in the things that I do, the connections that I make. I am connected with people, and in connecting with people and giving to people and being a good person, those people are I'm finding significance. Those people are seeing significance in me, and the world is meaningful. I find a meaning. I place the meaning on the world. I stamp it into its very nature. The problem is that when you think about it and you say, you know, you had grandparents and you remember something about them, but you don't really know most about them. But when you start thinking about it and you go back and you think about your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents, and you go back to probably, you know, Neanderthal man sitting in a cave somewhere, is that you remember absolutely nothing about them. You know nothing about them. They have been forgotten. As if, like I said, a tree falling in the forest with no one around to make a sound. It simply is nothing anymore, other than the fact that their DNA has continued on to the present. That if there's no memory which binds all of our events in our lives, all the connections in our life, the language we have in our life, the culture that we have in our life, there's no significance to the actions which we take other than to pass on our DNA. But ultimately, even that, passing on our DNA, we know by science, or at least by what science tells us, that the universe itself will come to an end. But in that end is not the bounded end that I'm talking about. It's the back into nothingness. So if we say that the earth came from nothing, the universe came from nothing, like Lawrence Krasner said, the earth comes from nothing, goes back into nothing, and nothing exists. Nothing is not simply moving from one state to another. Nothing is not simply going from this to that. Nothing becomes as if nothing ever existed. The nothing overshadows everything. If you've seen the movie, The Never-Ending Story, the nothing comes and doesn't just destroy what was and becomes a new existence into something new. It is as if nothing ever existed. And that's what we're talking about here, is that basically there is no meaning in the nothing. There is no meaning out there if from nothing we came and to nothing we go. We have choice, but that choice is empty, it's chaos, and it's meaningless. And honestly, we don't believe that. No human being believes that. We can't exist. And again, this is why people say, well, I create meaning for myself. Good for you. You create meaning for yourself. So in essence, you have to believe in something. Whether it's, God or whatever. You can't simply choose to say that there is no meaning. You can say, well, I have meaning right now. I have significance right now, or I find my delight, I just find my meaning in the things I enjoy. But ultimately, the things outside of yourself are what somehow reciprocate back. No one is an island. We don't stand idly by and say, my actions mean nothing. Either it's delight in my pleasure, delight in my, whatever, delight in giving someone pain, whatever my significance. We find our life in a reciprocal connection with others, a reciprocal connection with things, that things are bounded together in some kind of ultimate relationship. And if that's not true, we just can't believe there's just no world in which we can believe it's true, because that's ultimately a world like that leads to no life at all. And that's, I would say, that's where suicide comes from. Suicide comes in this moment where people say there's just nothing. There is no connection, no hope, no nothing. So anyway, back to the idea of determinism versus free will. I'd say that my understanding is that while I believe in that we are free, I believe that in the present we have the feeling of freedom, and that feeling of freedom is significant and important. I don't think that we are. I believe the story has already been written. And it has to have been. Because without the story having already been written, there is no meaning in the present. Now, that doesn't mean I have access to the meaning. That doesn't mean I have assurance of the meaning. I don't know what that meaning is. Oftentimes I'm confused and befuddled. I have no, what does this moment mean? What does my past mean? How do I fit it all together? And sometimes I agonize over that. Where am I going? And again, it all makes sense because its meaning is important for the choice that I'm going to make today. What's made me happy in the past? Who am I? How have I lived in the past? What am I? Who were my parents? What is the story I'm telling myself? Where am I headed? That meaning that I know right now in the past is important for today. But to know that meaning, I have to assume the future. I have to look forward to a future and in some sense enact the future right now. So in some sense, I think I'm a Christian existentialist, like Søren Kierkegaard, which means that in some sense, while I'm not assured of anything, I'm not assured of that faith is not, in some how we interpret Hebrews this way, that faith is the evidence of things, the assurance of things not seen, or something like that. And I don't think faith is assurance like what we often think of as that it's something which is known. It's not known. We don't know it in the way we know the past. Faith is a movement into the future with a firm commitment to something which we have not yet seen. And in some sense, by having a firm commitment to that thing in the future, we kind of make that future a reality. And it's only by not being able to see, or only projecting, or only being able to look forward to something which isn't there yet, but yet it is there. We find it there. If I could go off on something else, I'm just riffing on this idea real quick. So if the world is determined, this is basically, I think why I say it's determined is the sense that if here's another argument for why it's determined. If God, let's just say in terms of theology, or even just if there was just nothing, let's just say God for the minute, but if God made the seed and he knew what the seed would become, a tree with all of its branches. So God both creates and he knows the future. So that's what everyone believes. So if God is both the creator and the creator of all things and the knower of the future, that he didn't just create the seed, he created everything, including the branches on the tree. So, and that means time itself, every action, every decision. So you can't have the creator be the creator of everything and know the future and not be the creator and sustainer of every decision that's ever made. That's determinism. That's where we get this idea of being determined. I have one more thought about, meaningless chaos, time, meaning, all that stuff. Let me read some questions here, but actually, before I read the questions, let me just explain this to you before I lose my train of thought. So, I believe that Christianity succeeded for one thing. And it's kind of the idea of the past and the future. The past, again, is what is known. Past is what is known. It's our existence, let's just say our existence right now. So there's a connection between the past of what I know, the world that I know, which is physical, tangible, all those kind of things, those things which keep us grounded, the thing which scientists look at again and again, all the things that we know, the temporal stuff, the existence of what we know. And then there's a present, and beyond the present is something which is completely unknown. And this is what Christianity did. So in the knowing right now, and there's a feeling, again, because of what we've come to know, is that there's a feeling of chaos and meaninglessness that we can give, and there's a lack of hope. So if I'm in pain right now, and I'm suffering right now, and it seems that it will be without end, there is no hope in the future. There's nothing in my experience which says, like, for instance, let's just say I'm a dying person. If I'm dying of cancer and I'm terminal. I'm terminal. We know we're all terminal. We know we're all going to die. And if we just look to our existence and we only look to that, only by what we know, there is no hope. There is only chaos. It's meaningless. The suffering which I suffer alone, and I will die in my suffering, and there will never be anything beyond that. Yeah, but I'm talking. I'm doing a video, live stream. This is my daughter, by the way. So what Christianity did, and why it revolutionized everything, was it said, whether true or not, and again, I'm not saying whether I know this to be true in my experience, but it said that there was a heaven out here. That there was a place that had been prepared. And then there was hope for a future beyond the grave. So there's hope, there's preparation, there's all those things out there. Now, why does that make a difference if it doesn't exist? Because in believing and anticipating, it changes what we feel right now. So in essence, it's a hermeneutic circle. If we project a meaning, somehow we become that meaning. A meaning which we may never know. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I can't say with certainty to anybody that I know this to be true. I'm going to tell you that because that's beyond what any one of us can know with certainty. Now again, there's reasons to believe, there's evidence perhaps, whatever. We project out there, but the future itself is completely unknown. It's beyond our experience. What is beyond our experience and what is known can never, or at least right now, be known. So there's a crossing over into something, into death itself, which is in essence, kind of like the present, moving into the present unknown. But by believing that, in essence, the resources of that thing come to bear. So, like for instance, I read an article once. I tried to find it again, but I couldn't find it. But they were saying that there was that in Africa, currently in Africa, that Christians were much more likely to turn themselves over to disease and death and problems that might harm them. So they're thrust into positions where harm might occur. So they're willing to give up their lives. They're willing to die. They're willing to suffer. And the question is, where does that resource come to suffer in the present? Where does that resource come to lay down my life and suffer with others when it only causes me pain? The person who sees chaos, meaningless, and a lack of hope will say, boy, I don't have anything to do with that because all I'm going to get right now. The only thing which I'm going to find pleasure is I'm going to find pleasure right now. But if someone's in pain, the ability for someone to engage with that pain, the ability for someone to enter into your pain, even when they're feeling pleasure, to turn away from the pleasure to enter into your pain, can only come from this hope that one day that pain will be alleviated for you both. And then in some sense that hope, that promise of pain being alleviated altogether. That is significant. Where do we find, so how do we define the meaning of our lives? Again, that's an existential idea. The existential idea is that we, in the present, in the current, I have freedom, and that freedom leads to an anxiety. I feel absolutely free. I have an anxiety about what I should do, where I should become, all that kind of stuff. And in essence, that's basically where faith comes in. It's a projection into the future, and I think we all do it. Even atheists do it. They make a bet, they flip a coin, they say, this is where I'm going to go. I believe the evidence leads me to this direction. And the Christian says, I'm making a bet. I believe the evidence leads me in this direction. Neither of us truly know what the direction is. And I think this goes back to my No Country for Old Men video, is that it's in the flipping of the coin to say, what future is better? And what will change me right now for the better? The world that I want, be the change you want to see, that kind of thing. Be the change you want to see. How can I be the change I want to see? Well, it's only with the idea that the world itself is changing and that there is some meaning existence behind it. So to choose that, to willfully choose that, to make it part of ourselves, and to foster others to make that choice, to make it part of ourselves, I think is essential for any type of life that we would like to live, or we'd like others to live with us. To make a world a better place. And a lot of people think the world's going to hell in a handbasket, and the world is chaos and terrible. Now, I want you guys to go back to the time where Christianity itself was first came into the world, first century. Do you think the Roman world was so much better than our own? Was so much better than our own? Which, no. I would say that the world was quite worse. There was no freedom. There was slavery. There was, brutality left and right. And our whole understanding of human rights and giving to people what we would like to have ourselves has come, and I'm going to say come through this idea of this world that existed, that we hadn't yet seen yet, and people who were willing to die and suffer so that world could become a reality. And it hasn't come with easy. It hasn't come with it hasn't come. It's come with fits and starts. There've been times where it's been good, times where it's been bad, all that kind of stuff. But it didn't come without the belief in a future, which was more hopeful than it was than a reality. That which transcends time itself, which is now becoming present to us. Anyway, let's read some comments, and that's me meandering and thinking out loud. See what some of the comments are. Going way up. You guys have really been going at it, haven't you? Is time created? All time affects all time at the time. Some say deja vu is memory of what only happened moments before. Okay. Vivi Star, you didn't answer my question about Fury. We need to know. Am I going to make a video on Fury? Probably not. I'm sorry. I've got a list of movies I'd like to do. Currently working on Arrival. I want to do Interstellar. I want to do Star Wars. I want to do The Game. And I have some other listed videos that I want to do. But I've got some good thoughts about those movies. And even just if it's a good movie, there's got to be something to it that my particular way that I or the particular subject matter of the channels. I just don't just do movies. There's lots of movies that would be, wow, that's a great movie. Let's just talk about it. I don't talk about movies. It's got to have something of meat and substance which can go beyond that. Let's see here. We are already in eternity, but we are in the bubble contained in eternity called time. Okay. Aslan Rising, 1776. This is time part of creation? This is time part of creation? Question mark. Awaken to life, Dogo. Logos Rising. Logos Rising is basically E. Michael Jones' motto at Colleen. Many YouTubers that have been influenced by EMJ say it too. Colleen, Logos Rising, bahaha. I just noticed your name. You didn't know my name was Logos Made Flesh? Colleen, or somebody else has it. I'm not following. There we go. There we go. Logos Rising. See it there. Colleen, I have no idea who that is. Logos Rising. Buzz Record Bear. EMJ is a great man. He's probably the last thread holding me to Catholicism. I'll have to check EMJ out. I don't know anything about EMJ. Ricky Ricardo. What is he doing? Ricky Ricardo. We are doing deep thought. Aslan Rising 1776. If time is not created, then wouldn't that mean God is subject to time? Because if time wasn't created, it's eternal and would either precede God, which would mean God is an eternal, or, yeah, I agree with that. I agree that time has a beginning and time has an end, that it hasn't always existed and it won't always exist, that God is is objective and unchanging while we ourselves are changing. Aslan Rising 70, time is part of God's nature. Duda says at Aslan's Rising 70, there is no God. Buzz Record Bear, I do shrooms once every few years to help me better understand this stuff. Christopher Rodriguez, have you ever seen any of Tarkovsky's movies? I haven't. Tarkovsky. Aaron Tarkovsky? You have to enlighten me on that. Edgar Poe, laugh out loud. Aslan Rising 1776 at Duda. That's utter nonsense. Oh, so we got an argument going on now. Buzz Record Bear, life is a physical manifestation of time, I think. Both are an attribute of God / Logos. Duda at Aslan 76, tears and crying. Motion simulated tours. The story of Pharaoh's heart being hardened by God as well as though his own free will. What are we to make of this? Do we have free will within his sovereignty in some way? Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's something called Molinism that I've been contemplating a little bit, which allows for God to be both sovereign and allow for us to have free will. So God knows every possible future, even though he doesn't know the actual one that we will take. So God, in some sense, creates and knows all possible outcomes, but he knows all counterfactuals, we'd say. It's an interesting thought. For you to say God does not exist, you will need to know everything that does exist and is a being in this life and multiverse before you can rule that out. Granted, I think that there's so much we do not know. And again, that's part of this channel, is the idea of that there's lots we don't know. And I think we can, I have no problem saying that there's lots we don't know, and nobody knows the whole completely. We need each other to, in some sense, connect the whole together. At Aslan Rising, 1776 by Duda, listen to Sam Harris and Neil deGrasse Tyson, Stephen Hawking, Richard Dawkins, etc. Buzz Record Bear, Hindu philosophy says that we can't see the future, so the gods can enjoy life through us to create fear and comedy and drama. Logos Rising, laugh my ass off, Deepan. Logos Rising, I'm way past that, honey. Squidman 6000 says, if God knows everything, then God created evil, but God is constantly a symbol of purity and good, which means either humans don't understand God or they do know and don't care about that evil half. I think, okay, so that's a good point. The question of, in relation to all this stuff, the question of the problem of evil. Because, and I think that this has, we can explain the problem of evil through this. I'm going way long. Thanks for hanging out. What is it? It's an hour, but the problem of evil says that that God cannot be all good. Let's just say all good and all powerful at the same time, and there be evil in the world. So God cannot be all good and all powerful and there be evil in the world. Doesn't make sense if you put it like that, right? So evil in the world either makes God either not all good or not all powerful. The presence of evil in the world disproves that the God of the Bible, at least, you could say that there's a God that exists, but he's not all good or he's not all powerful. He's impotent to make things right, or he's not all good. So here is how this all plays out in terms of time. Let me see this. Let me think about this for a second. So the present. So in the present, then what is future, past, future? So in the present, we see we make sense of everything in light of our past experience. And in our past experience, we know that there's evil. Okay? We know that there's evil. Now, we may believe that God is good and God is all-powerful, projecting that into the future, saying God is all good and all, but it would seem that God being there being evil in the world would somehow make that not true. Again, this is a projection out into what we don't know. This is the past we do know, and we're making a projection out into what we do not. And this is the faith that we have. We believe, Christians at least, that God is both good, and all powerful, and yet there is evil in the world. Okay? God is all good, God is all powerful, and yet there's evil in the world. Whereas the atheist, oftentimes, I'm not saying all atheists, but sometimes the atheists will use this to disprove this. The question is that is there a future in which this evil makes good sense? That's the missing factor. Is there a future in which this evil makes good sense? That's the faith that Christians have. The faith that Christians have is that even the present evil that we experience will turn out for good in the future that is to come. Now, let me just stop and pause and think about that for a minute. So that looking out into what we don't know and making is to say that is there justification for saying that evil can make good sense? Yes, there is. There's absolute justification for believing that evil makes good sense, and we do that every day. For instance, I'll tell you a story about my own child. This is an analogy. It's not necessarily this is reality, because I don't know it's reality, but it's an analogy. Is to say that my child, Abby, when she was younger, had a fever of 103. We took her to the emergency room because she was about 1 year old, 2 years old, and she couldn't keep any food down. We took her to the ER, and the doctor told me, "I need you to hold her arm down while I give her a shot." So I held her arm down, and the doctor took a needle and put it right into her arm. And I remember the terror and pain in her face. She looked right at me, and she screamed out and looked at me as if she was terrified and didn't know what was going on. And there was no way for me, or at least at the time, no way for me to communicate that to her in a way that she could understand. She couldn't understand what was going on and the reason it was, based upon her limited experience, or based upon her limited ability of knowledge and being able to speak, all those type of things. But I knew what was good. I knew what was good for her, and the future would bear that out. In fact, it did bear that out. So what was done there, the pain and suffering, resulted in her good, in her wholeness, fighting against something which was ultimate evil. Now, the problem with that is to say, so let's just say this. So in some sense, we know, and let's also say this. So I also know that if I go along and I accidentally touch a stove, and it burns my hand, I've learned something that's valuable. Don't touch a stove, that'll burn your hand. I've learned something about reality that's significant and important, especially for my well-being and the well-being of others. So I've come to know something, and something I wouldn't necessarily have known. Again, that we go back to the Garden of Eden, which it says it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I believe it wasn't just the knowledge of evil. The tree was both the knowledge of good and evil, because apart from the evil, you can't know the good. There is, in some sense, a lack of knowledge on that part, that in knowing the evil, you know good, and in knowing good, you come to know evil. Where God says, hey, at the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, in the first chapter, he says repeatedly, and it was good. and it was good. And God said it was good. It was good. It's good. God knows what is good, but He also knows what is evil. And in that sense, humans only knew what was good, and they didn't quite know what was evil. But and therefore they didn't quite understand the good. There's a reciprocal nature there. I believe. Again, I'm not a philosopher. We could go well deep into that. But again, so we know that good can result. We know that evil, bad things, suffering, pain, the things we'd like to eradicate from our lives, even death itself, all the things can result in good. Now, that's in a limited sense. That is in a time-bound sense. What do you do with kids who die of cancer, who never ever get a chance to ever have a life? They come into the world and they go out of the world just like that, and it's a terrorizing, painful experience, and they have no concept of anything. Now, let me just turn it on the table here. That's the world in which we live. We know that to be the case. That's our experience. We know that children die horrible, horrible deaths. The atheists would have us believe that there is no hope in that. Get that? Children die horrible, horrible, horrible deaths. And I can blame a God who doesn't exist. I can choose to believe that God doesn't exist, but I can also blame Him for the evil that occurs. So basically, in essence, I'm just accepting the fact that evil exists and there is no hope. Whereas the Christian says, this is terrible, it's awful, it's mind-boggling, but by being able to see a God that is good and all-powerful, they bring the resources of that all-good, all-powerful God to bear on the evil that is being experienced in this world. That's important. That's significant. So what do we know? We know that a belief in God changes people so that evil becomes tolerable, manageable. That love can exist in a world like that is broken because of people who have had access to a God which is out there in the unknown and bring Him to bear on a world which is totally in chaos and without hope. Because it changes us. So, could we say that that's the world that God has created for us to live in for that reason? I look at the movie, the movie Signs. The movie Signs. I love that movie because throughout the midst of the movie, and we're talking about the hermeneutic circle, the movie doesn't make sense until the very end. Or at least it doesn't make sense to the main character whose name is Graham. Graham has lost his faith in God. Why? Because his wife was killed in a car accident. I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. His wife was killed in a car accident, and his brother hasn't really done the things that he's supposed to do. He's a baseball player, but he's had his problems. His kids, have their own problems too. But really, he's lost his faith in a good God, maybe an all-powerful God. But the Signs is really the question of the problem of evil. Can you believe in a God like that? Well, Graham has a hard time believing that. And in fact, one moment in the scene where his son has asthma and is in pain and there's nothing he can do about it, he actually breaks out and just says, "I hate you, God. I hate you. I hate you." So it wasn't necessarily that he believed in God, but he didn't quite. God was either a malicious, evil person. You're not good, God. That's what he was saying when he says, "I hate you." You're not good, God. It wasn't so much saying that he didn't believe in God's existence or that God wasn't powerful enough. He was saying that, God, you're not good. And that affected him. But if you pause the movie halfway through the movie, you would see a reality in which God wasn't good. All these bad things did happen to Graham. His wife died. His son had asthma. His daughter can't drink a cup of water without just leaving it somewhere. She can't drink another. Well, all these weird things in the movie, these quirks in the movie. And you say, if I pause the movie right in the middle of it, if I'm in the present, haven't reached the whole, the present simply says that everything is meaningless. This whole thing is just complete bunk. And yet, by the time you get to the end of the movie, when you get to the end of the movie, all is revealed to have meaning throughout. And that's the point of Signs. It's the revelation that says God was good all along, and you just hadn't seen it yet. So I think that's important to what we're talking about here. So did God create evil? Well, in the sense of absolute evil, I don't believe so. But if we see that all evil itself will be changed into a good, or at least turn out for good, then the good which evil created or came about from, I think that God has a hand in that. Does that make sense? Logos Horizon, did you learn something from them? Buzz Record Bear, you just named the stepping stones that took me to Christ. Sam Harris was the last step. He created a great meditation app. Squidman 6000, which that of itself contradicts any edict involving a Christian or Hebrew God? Got to go back up again because someone just posted. So let's see here. Squidman 6000, I'm not quite understanding you. He said, which that of itself contradicts any edict involving a Christian or Hebrew God. Not following you there. If you could explain yourself a little bit. Squidman 6000 at Squid. Mungo says at Squidman 6000. Doesn't free will necessitate evil? You can't choose good or God if there's no other option. Yes, and I believe, in essence, that's probably why there is the idea that God is both hidden, meaning that we don't have knowledge of him in the same way we have knowledge of our experience, that God remains hidden, and that we must have faith, and that evil somehow exists in that basically that God has created a world in which we must choose him, that the choosing is somehow important to being the world in which the good world in which he's creating. And that involves the walking in a growth of knowledge into the unknown. So the very nature of reality seems to suggest that to me, or at least we can make sense of it in that way. Let's just say that we can make sense of it that way. It doesn't have to not make sense, or at least we don't have to say that it doesn't make sense that way. I think it makes good sense that way. Squidman 6000 and Miles Mungo. I personally don't believe in morality due to how subjective it is. My morals won't constitute someone else's. As far as free will, our actions are highly connected to our surroundings. The question of morality is a good one. I think it's connected with this idea of what we can know and what we don't know. And because morality is also the question of meaning and purpose. It's connected with final causes. And something we can't get away from. So, and how we interpret the world. All those things are connected to morality. I'm just not going to get into it right now. Alexander Klopov at Buzz Record, Bear mushrooms was the first ever spiritual experience that blew me away by how much I didn't know about my mind, thought, love, time, and all aspects of reality. Alexander Klopov, also words are a poor channel of energy that can't really transfer a meaning for it to make a change in whoever is receiving the message. Also, words are a poor channel of energy that can't really transfer a meaning for it to make a change in whoever is receiving the message. Yeah, there is I wouldn't say it's a poor channel. It's just an incomplete channel. That it is doing what it's meant to do. And like, for instance, to say it's a poor channel is to say, I believe there's something fundamental about the channel itself, which is significant to how we see the world, or how we're meant to see the world, and how we're meant to come to understand the world. Certainly understanding is where we're heading to. We're coming to an arrival where I believe we're coming to a point where we will know the things which were previously unknown. But there is something that is important in the unfolding moment by moment, and the confusion and the chaos, which is supposed to, I think, reveal something in ourselves, which otherwise wouldn't be known if we just had everything whole all at once. Aslan Rising 1776 says, the essential question is God subject to time, or did God create time? Again, I believe if everything is determined, as I suggested, then God is not subject to time in the same way that we are, that he exists outside of time, and but at the same time, this is a good question, is that He may have, or certainly in Jesus, he entered into time in terms of what Christians believe, entered into time to be changed by time and to grow in time. Again, I don't believe that Jesus at all, if we look theologically, had the mind of God in the cradle. I mean, he was God, but that doesn't mean, I mean, he grew, like, according to Luke, he grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Miles Mungo, love the game. Great movie. I'll talk about it later. Alexander Klopov, Game of Love. Braden Brinkley, God created time. First verse in the Bible covers time, space, and matter. Aslan Rising. Yeah, I don't know if that's how you can interpret the first verse of Genesis. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be interpreted, but you could see that. I know people who see it that way. Buzz Wrecker Bear, mushrooms are a great tool to be used very, very rarely, especially, I think, particularly on salad and pizza when you want them. Once you get to the message, put down the phone. Alexander Klopov, time seems like part of this world, but it does not have to be another dimension. Miles Mungo at Squidman 6000. I've heard other people echo similar sentiments, a disbelief in objective morality. Miles Mungo says, I'd agree that my morals don't constitute someone else's, but would you say evil exists? Can it exist objectively with or without God? I honestly, again, I don't believe meaning exists, and therefore morals do not exist apart from a God. Again, if we come from nothing and are moving to nothing, then really there is nothing right now. So no, they cannot exist without a grounding of a beginning and an end, a coming from something into something. It must be bounded in order to have any sense of meaning. We have to believe it. I don't think anybody doesn't believe it. Aslan Rising 1776, does knowing require experience, or can one know without experiencing? Again, it's an imagination that I was talking about. We don't know. Our imagination or faith, let's just say faith, and it is in some sense like an imagination. I'm not, it is a projection from what we know. It is a leap into the dark from what we know. So it is a type of knowing, but it is not the knowing I'm talking about. It is not the grounded knowing. Again, the faith can be wrong. Our imagination can be wrong. And in that sense, it's unbounded from reality, the reality which we know. Now, it could be reality. We just don't know it yet. So faith or imagination is somewhat the same thing. It's operating in the similar realm. If it's not the same thing, I'm not sure these are things that I'm thinking about right now. But it's not the same thing. But that's not to say it's not a type of knowing either. Like, for instance, if I sit down in a chair sitting right behind me, and I go, I'm going to sit in the chair. Now, I'm not actively thinking that chair can support me. I may not know the chair can support me because I haven't experienced the chair knowing, but based upon my experience, I can imagine or have some faith, some trust that the chair will support me because it's a chair, and obviously chairs aren't there for any other reason than to support people sitting in them. But move that out beyond things that we have experienced, like, for instance, what experience might we have beyond death? Is there reality beyond death? Right there, you've just lost any sense of knowing from what we know right now. We have hope, we have faith, we have an imagination, but it's not quite the same thing. Now, we have people who've told us they've been there and they've come back. We've had, that in some sense life doesn't have meaning if it doesn't exist like that. And I would say that life doesn't have meaning if life doesn't go on, in some sense beyond the grave. I believe if we go into nothing in death, then it makes our life meaningless. If it's in the same way that the universe dying and becoming nothing makes everything as if it was nothing. Christopher Rodriguez, Andrei Tarkovsky, he's very, very spiritual filmmaker, and I think you'll have a wealth of time. Is that guy who did Pi? Is he the guy that did Noah? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. You'll have a wealth of things to explore in his films. Please look into them. Miles Mungo, William Craig has a good analogy for free will versus sovereignty. Yeah, and he's a Molinist, which is interesting. Again, he believes in a God of counterfactuals. God doesn't know. He knows every possible outcome, even though he doesn't know the actual outcome we will choose. He's allowed us for freedom in that. King Humble. As Pangloss would say, this is the best of all possible worlds. Evil is permitted so that a greater good can come about. I agree with that. Alexander Klopov, depending on what you make of your life experience, you get to choose. Is your answer to life of love or fear? That's right. Miles Mungo, I was actually thinking of Frank Turek, and you give a website there. Alexander Klopov, seems like we are all actors in the end because we are all born into roles. Shakespeare had it right. Yeah, the world's a stage. Aslan, right? And again, that's key. Again, and I've talked about this before in this terms of context. It's as if we have 5 acts. I mean, in terms of Christianity, you would say we have 4 acts of a 5-act play. We have the first 3, and we have the 5th one. But yet in the present, we don't have the script in order to enact the thing. We have basically what we know, and we have an idea of what will come about. And in the moment, we're bridging the gap between what is known and what is hoped for in the present to live out and make sense of what is known and what is hoped for. And that's what we're doing on the stage of life. That's how we're to act. And I think the Bible gives us that trajectory, that plan, even if it's not a literal say this or don't say this, that kind of thing. And so God uses evil to glorify himself. Aslan Rising 70. Or you said Aslan Rising 1776. Evil is the absence of good or the opposite of good. For evil to exist, God simply removes himself. Furthermore, the ultimate good is God, and therefore his glory is good. And so God uses evil to glorify himself. Alexander Klopov, the ultimate evil is God also, because he is everything and everywhere. Again, Alexander, that is a statement of faith, not a statement of fact. And that's where I would say for the atheist and the Christian alike, we are projecting, believing something about our experience and projecting out into a world that we don't know. The question is, what world do we want? And where do we want to go? Alexander Klopov, it's all play. Brandon Brinkley, well, again, it's all play. Of course it is. Everyone's playing. There's not one person in the world that isn't playing at something. We are going into something we don't know. And therefore, we're making it up as we go along. We're assuming some things, we're projecting things, but we just don't know. And that's okay. I think we've got to admit that in order to move ahead. And that's what I'm saying. And that's why I absolutely love talking to atheists. I love talking to people who don't believe in God, because I see myself not as divorced from them, but in connection with them. And I hope they see themselves in connection with me. We are not different from one another. Only in our interpretation are we different from one another. But we're both doing the same thing, ultimately doing the same thing. Although I think one is right, one is wrong, obviously, but that's okay. So do you. So we can talk about that. Alexander Klopov, it's all play. Alexander Klopov, the Alpha and Omega. Alexander Klopov, exactly. Miles Mungo at Alexander Klopov. Where did you get God is everything from? Aslan Rising. See, you guys are having conversations with everybody else. Is anybody having a conversation with me? Miles Mungo, Alexander Klopov, where did you get God is everything from? Alexander Rising 1776. Part of this is understanding we are God's property. He may do with us what he wills. God taking the life which he created is not the same as the created taking the life of the created. Yeah, absolutely. Alexander Klopov. If people believe in God, really believed in God, and what we need to stand for, this would be a different world. They don't, they pretend. Alan Watts said, people would be screaming in the streets if they believed God, people believed in God, really believed in God, and what we need to stand for. This would be a different world. They don't, they pretend, Alan Watts said, people would be screaming in the streets if they knew. Absolutely. Right. yeah, there is timidity in faith, and there's room for doubt in faith. And that to say that faith is the opposite of doubt is not to understand what faith really is in the Bible. Even the Bible says, I mean, numerous times it says, you know, be patient with those who are doubting. To doubt is not to doubt is not to doubt is not to be faithful. Let's just say you can have faith, even if it's not 100%. You can, I don't know. Anyway, Aslan Rising, and you can operate in faith even when you doubt, because faith is an action in some. Faith is an action. Aslan Rising, 1776. Aslan, you ignore sin. King Humble, Alexander, the demons believe and tremble. King Humble, belief alone is far from enough. Alexander Klopov, we are God, wanting to be not all-knowing and infinite. He wants to be what he is, not in origin, so he dreams infinite dreams of life and is born with us and dies with us. Alexander Klopov. Miles Mungo, since all there is God, then he is very particle of creation. Also, psychedelic drugs suggest that very much. Account says, you look like you've been crying, brother. Not me. I haven't been crying. Buzz Record Bear, Alan Watts was an interesting and charismatic dude. Alan Watts was an interesting and charismatic dude. Taught me a lot about Eastern thought, but he was a degenerate in real life. Brandon Brinkley, let there be light are words, the acknowledgement to reveal. Nikita Skakun, are you familiar with any of the works of Julius Evola? No, Julius Evola. I'm not. Be interested in finding out what that is or who he is. Alexander Klopov at Aslan Rising, 1776. Sin is a concept that something is good or bad. Both are not real. There is no good or bad. There is only experience. Well, again, if things don't have meaning, then you're probably right. But that would say that there is no meaning in anything. And I don't think you really live like that. I think that you understand things to have meaning and significance, and you understand. And yeah, I think science, what it does is it tries to deny that the subjectivity is real. And what's interesting about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and mechanics is that we're finding out that perhaps subjectivity is more real than objectivity. Even objectivity doesn't exist without the subjectivity. Christopher Rodriguez, Andrei Tarkovsky made the film Stalker, Solarius, The Sacrifice, Ivan's childhood. Yes, I love Solarius. I've seen it. Great film. Thank you for that. I'll have to check out the others. Uras Mirkovic, what is your religion? I am a Christian. I was raised Pentecostal, kind of became a broadly evangelical, but it's kind of turned toward Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. So I would say that, like C.S. Lewis, I am a broad Christian. I'm a mere Christian, I'd say. And wrestle with things openly, I guess. But there's times that, even I doubt that. So there you go. Vivek Samrat, do you agree with Sam Harris' views on consciousness and atheism? If yes, why? You know what? I'd have to. I've listened to Sam Harris about morality, and I'd have to really delve into what he believes about those things. But if you can tell me what they believe, I can maybe riff on that. But I'd have to be refreshed on that. Dipanja Duda, it's 2 a.m. here. Good night. Hey, have a good night. Appreciate you sticking around. Aslan Rising, 1776. Alexander, you say that, but when your child's life is taken, you call for justice. Exactly. Miles Mungo at Duda, good night. Scott Ferguson, laugh out loud. Can you not tell when an intellectual is trying to say he has stepped outside his value system? Sam Harris is a prime example of this. Yeah, exactly. He's the person that says that he doesn't believe even as he believes. And that's, that we can't believe and yet we do. It's just something we can't get away from. It's like saying it can be an objective reality without a subjective reality. It's
it's impossible. I mean, without our subjective reality, there is no objective reality, because all is nothingness, because the only thing that's mediated in reality is even anything that is understanding of objectivity is our subjectivity. So objectivity, yeah, anyway, you talk about quantum physics and, Schrodinger's cat and all that stuff. But Alexander Klopov, there is meaning, but it's subjective. Each one discovers meaning for themselves. Life is about asking questions. You ask a question in life and you get an answer. Knock and the door will be opened. That is true. Well, again, there is meaning, but it's subjective. Each one discovers meaning for themselves. Okay, so this is what I would bring in, that is to say that when we communicate, when you're communicating right now, Alexander Klopov, you wrote words which you yourself understood. You encoded them into symbols, which you're now asking us to decode from those symbols the meaning that it is. Do I have the right? Well, I mean, I can. I'm not saying I'm not saying I can't. I could, if I wanted to, have the freedom to totally misconstrue what you just said. But do I have that right? Or ultimate right? Is it the good? Is it what we do in communication? Is it what I would expect from you? There is a back and forth in communication which is necessary. So it's not, the meaning doesn't just reside in you, it resides in the symbol and it resides in me. So there's the author, the text, and the reader. All those things are working together to find the meaning in what's being communicated. And in essence, that's time itself. It's the unfolding of time. The author unfolds in the text the meaning, which the reader then picks up. And that unfolding is necessary. But if the reader just simply says, I make up meaning as I go along, everything's meaningful just to me, that's divorced from reality. That's divorced from what we know of meaning itself, because meaning is in connection. And if you divorce yourself from that connection and you say, I just make meaning for myself, you've absolutely haven't found meaning. You found meaninglessness. Alexander Klopov, also thank you for this feed. This is a great channel. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. King Humble, subjective meaning is indistinguishable from no meaning. Aslan Rising, subjective meaning is indistinguishable from no meaning. Yes, yeah, but again, there's no subject. Objectivity and subjectivity are linked in a chain of being, that they're connected to each other. I'll have to think about that. I'm getting kind of tired. I've been talking for a long time. I'm almost done here, guys. Good live stream. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Aslan Rising. Thanks for sticking around. Appreciate it. Aslan Klopov retracted his message. Aslan Rising 1776. Alexander, we agree on something. Deepanjan Duda. This is a real good channel. Hey, appreciate that, sir. Thank you so much. Or if it's a ma'am, I'm not sure. I can't see your picture. But thank you so much for sticking around and put your 2 cents in. It's been a great conversation. Again, I love having the conversation, and I'm trying to engage the best way I know how to. My looking down hopefully is not distracting you as I'm not looking into the camera. Buzz Record Bear, good night. Thanks for the knowledge, sir. Good night to you, sir, and enjoy yourself. Get some good rest. Scott Ferguson, you can thank Einstein for all this relativity crap. No, I think it existed before him, especially in literature. I think that Nietzsche and Soren Kierkegaard were thinking relativistically even before Einstein. Einstein just had his own theory of mathematics. In fact, I think Einstein said that his scientific theory said nothing about the meaning in the world. It was merely a scientific theory about space-time. Bruges, great channel, my man. Thank you. Vivek Samrat, he makes a video on Primer. Again, you're going to have to refresh me on who makes a video on Primer. If I asked a question before. Vivek Samrat, please, GN. Not sure what that means, which probably means you're asking me to search for something. I'm thinking maybe you got GN wrong. I'm not sure. Miles Mungo, love your videos, except that I need to see some of the movies before you analysis. Look forward to the future video. Again, you got to watch the videos. I assume in making these videos that you've seen the movies. Even though I try to refresh the videos, I don't want to destroy your sense of excitement by seeing the film the first time around. But in essence, That's what I do, and that's why I don't believe directors talk about the meaning of their films, or anybody likes to talk about the meaning of the symbols they make, because in essence the symbol invites a conversation, and it's the reason we watch movies multiple times. So if I watch a movie the first time, I'm not getting it, but by the time I get to the end, if I want to find the meaning, I have to go back and look at the beginning and watch it all the way through again. So meaning is found in the repeat viewings, and to give away the meaning of something, to tell you what something means, is like spoiling the film before you've even seen it. And in essence, that's why spoilers are almost just part of my channel. Aslan Rising 1776 logos. Check out Michael Horton putting amazing back into grace. I will. Thank you very much. Scott Ferguson. It's the cornerstone of material atheism. It's the cornerstone of material atheism. Alexander Klopov. What is your favorite movie? I think The Shawshank Redemption has stuck with me for ever since I've seen it, even when I thought it was a pretty anti-Christian movie. It just was something that I enjoyed very much, and it moved me, and I kept watching and watching and watching. I think, another one, Magnolia. I can't not talk about Magnolia. That is a movie that you all need to see. It's been out for a long time. Tom Cruise, I think 1999, maybe 2000. It is a phenomenal movie. It's one of my favorites. So those, like I said, the Seventh Seal, the movies that I go back to over and over again become my favorite movies. The ones that just speak to, Groundhog's Day speaks to me deeply, and moves me every time I see it. So those are the kind of movies that I like. So those are just a few of my favorite movies. Hard to pin them down. Vivek Samrat, Primer movie by Shane Carruth. More Orthodoxy. Hello, sir. How you doing? Been watching your channel. Everybody go over to More Orthodoxy. He's got some great stuff. You're the man, Matt. Thank you. Miles Mungo. Nice chatting with you all too. Deepanjan Duda. I have seen Arrival. It would be a great video for me. Ha ha ha. Aslan Rising 1776. I watched The Quiet Place because of your video, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's a good movie. It moves me too. Yeah, especially when it comes to my own kids. Hey guys, well, it looks like it's about an hour and 40 minutes into this. I was actually encouraged to do this by More Orthodoxy, to do something new, try something new. If you guys have any advice, I don't think I'm going to keep this up. I might just make this private. In fact, you know what I'm going to do with this? I think I'm going to put this on my Patreon page. I'll leave it open for everyone to watch, but hopefully it'll encourage people to go over there and be thankful to my patrons for making this channel possible and really supporting me. Even the fact that while I'm working behind the scenes, they've really just supported the videos themselves and what the videos are doing. And I just have to say thank you to those people who are supporting me. Appreciate it. And would hope that you guys, if you guys haven't supported the channel, maybe you would support the channel. But again, it's okay if you don't. But share with people about it. This is a conversation that's important. I find important, and that people, they like to hear about, and they just don't know where to talk about it. Where to, have freedom to talk about it, freedom to doubt, freedom to have faith, and to connect with each other. And that's what I'd hope to help other people see. So. Adizi, when's the new video? Love the content. Again, I've got a script together, completed script I had, but there's so much I want to say, and I'm trying to get it just right, and I keep going over and over and over again, which is kind of like the hermeneutic circle. I just keep wrapping my mind around parts and whole, trying to make it better. I really have a strong belief in this one. There's not the last couple ones. I really felt like I had something to say, but I didn't feel like I had the thing to say. Like I've had some times in the past. And on this one, I feel like there's something there in Arrival that needs to be explored. And a lot of the stuff, just a lot of the stuff we've talked about here is in Arrival. And there's more to it than that. I think Arrival is offering something that I haven't even explained yet. But if you get this idea of the hermeneutic circle, that is the heptapod circle. That is the language itself. The heptapod's language is a symbol of language itself and the symbol of meaning and how meaning is found and where it's found. And it ultimately is a symbol, for Louise's understanding of her meaning of her life and her purpose, and the purpose of her daughter's death and where she exists in the scheme of things. So I really feel strongly about that. I'm pushing, man, hopefully within a month, but I always say that. So bear with me. It's coming. Thank you for loving the content. Smiles for Cinephiles. Hey, Guy, how you doing, man? Smiles for Cinephiles. Check him out. He did a video and thanked me. I gave him a shout out back. I want to say thank you so much, sir. He's got some great content. Cool Hand Luke. He does some other videos. So check him out as well. Late to the party, but hey, from the UK. Yeah, right on. Got two people here. More Orthodoxy and Smiles for Cinephiles, both from UK. Dr. Delicious. Are there any upcoming films that you think might have to potentially be a video for you at some point? Upcoming films. Boy, I'm thinking The Joker. I'm thinking that might have to be something that's coming up that I'm going to have to see and watch. I think it's going to be profound. I could be wrong, but there was something in the trailer that I saw that said that this is going to be more than just a movie about a comic book hero. It's going to be more on the level of The Dark Knight and Christopher Nolan's take on that franchise. Aslan Rising, 1776. As a father and a man learning to be a man, The Quiet Place touched me. Absolutely. Beautiful film. Smiles for Cinephile. No, thank you. I appreciate it, man. No, I appreciate you. Well, it looks like that's it. If there's no more comments coming in, I appreciate your guys' time and watching the video. Again, I'll put this on Patreon. Thank you to my patrons for seeing this. Any suggestions about making this kind of thing more helpful? I went on and on and on for a very long time. And if you'd like to see something like this, maybe shorter, 5-15 minute video, I've got some stuff I could share. I don't know, it's my first time, so I downloaded a new encoder. It's got some cool stuff I think I can do with it. But maybe we'll do Bible this way. Maybe we could do the Bible this way, finish that Gospel of Mark, more free-flowing. I think I might do that. If you guys are interested maybe in doing Mark, what I could do is I could do a private showing of this. If you're interested, I'll put it on my YouTube, my blog and post it up there so people can participate. I don't want to necessarily inundate the channel per se with the Bible, because again, that turns people off. Even though it's deeply related, I don't want to push people away who've come just to find out the meaning of a movie. That's the invitation. That's the where we talk about meaning and what exists, and then we'll use those things that we learned from the examples from movies, and we'll take it right to the Bible and understand it a little bit better. So that's the idea. So if you're interested in that, I will think more about that, and I think this setup possibly could work. So I appreciate the conversation. Love this. I just love talking with you guys. I never get to talk with you. I see these comments that come in, and it's this instantaneous feedback. This is awesome. I love this. Would love to see this, and one engaging with the books of the Bible. Fantastic. Love to have you. Adam, last name. Shrek the Musical is my Bible. All right, man. Okay. Never seen it, so I maybe it is. I haven't seen it, and at least maybe it could be for me too. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a great day, great night, and we'll see you guys later. All right.